Welcome back to the bullshit filter, Ray Harris.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
This is the continuation of our fascism series. This is episode 3 of Fascism for people playing along at home. So what we're trying to do is understand the roots of fascism. We hear a lot of talk these days, particularly about the US, but also about Italy, Germany, the rise of 21st century fascism, and there's some debate. Is it fascism? Is it not fascism? How do you know fascism? Is it like pornography? The American judge said, I know it when I see it.
Right.
Do you know fascism when you see it?
If they're having sex, I do. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pornographic fascism, which is my favorite kind of fascist pornography. Those Hugo Boss suits that they wear, and then they get them off. It's beautiful.
Slowly take them. You know what? Let's save that for the climax.
The jack boots.
Go ahead. Don't take those off.
In the first couple of episodes, we traced the roots of fascism from the French Revolution through the 19th century into the early 20th century. We looked at some of the precursors and some of the things that happened to give rise to fascism. But what I want to do in this episode is start to get into what it looked like in Italy, in Germany, in Spain, roughly 100 years ago. Started in the 20s.
Yeah.
And in this episode, I want to have a look at the role that World War I played in the role of fascism in Italy in the 20s, and also in Germany. But we'll start with Italy. But, you know, World War I, kids playing at home, First World War, 1914 to 1918, was obviously a cataclysm that shattered the old world order and radicalized millions of people, particularly in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It was the war to end all wars, they called it, and it really, I guess, made a lot of people think about the old world order, the sort of the kings of Europe. You'd had Napoleon 100 years earlier, the French Revolution and Napoleon start to really make people question the idea of who gets to be a king, why are these people kings, and why can't I be a king? You sort of saw the rise of nationalism throughout Europe after the French Revolution.
Exactly.
But then you get to World War I 100 years later. There's still this old world order in existence. It's changed a lot. New borders, unifications happened in places like Germany and Italy that we talked about in the last couple of episodes. But the First World War had glorified violence in many ways and sacrifice in the name of the country on a mass scale. And these things had always been around. Violence and sacrifice in the act of war. We go back to Alexander the Great, go back earlier than that. These things had always been around, but this was on a scale that the human race had never seen before. Millions and millions of people dying on battlefields for glory, for the nation, under a flag, and it produced what Hannah Arendt, one of the great scholars of fascism writing in the middle of the 20th century, called the front generation. Men who were bonded by comradeship in battle, disillusioned with civilian society, contemptuous of the liberal order that had existed. They were questioning the authenticity of the old world order, and the old world order hadn't experienced the authenticity of the struggle. They stayed at home. They sent their young men off to battle. Young men came back, and a lot of the veterans felt like the war had given their life meaning and purpose. They had fought for something, and they were angry when they got back. They saw the peacetime democracy as kind of weak, kind of corrupt, and they wanted more control over their countries. They wanted more say in how things were run. And the proto-fascists used this military experience and this anger, this disenchantment that millions of men had when they got back from the war to turned them into a force to overturn the established political system. Comments on that, Ray?
Well, I just remember being a teenager and reading, and I was shocked, but I remember reading about before World War I kicks off. You know, they've been planning for this for years. They've got systems set up in place. They've got train schedules, and they are quite eager because no one really has a sense of the scale that's about to unfold. And so you're right. So the war kicks off. Millions of people die. Life is upturned for years. Again, millions. And by the time they get home, some of the questions they're asking is, what did we do this for? What did we sacrifice for? When change comes in any form, some people embrace it. Some people are open to it. Some people are not. And they want to have more control. They want to keep things the way they are. Obviously, those in power want the status quo to remain. But as we're going to get to, and you're right, World War I shattered everybody's thoughts about everything because this was something that it never happened before. So as we go into this, and I won't go too far, but and you made this point, fascism does well because it's, let's be honest, it's extreme. When it's extreme in its attempt to solve problems. It does well when things aren't going well. And as you just hinted at, after World War I, Europe is desolated. I mean, Italy felt cheated. It was promised some territory. It didn't get it. Its economy is in shambles. There's unemployment, there's strikes, there's food shortages, there's soldiers who are very angry and disillusioned, just like you said. There's the rise of the socialists, of the communists who are trying to go, no, there's a better way, there's a different way. And it's that, and it's coming from the left that is threatening those who like the status quo, that Mussolini and others are able to tap into and turn it into a political force with fists. And so you're right. I think if World War I doesn't destroy Europe the way it does, that people like Mussolini and Hitler would have had a harder time because there would have been less devastation for them to fight against.
Yeah, Hannah Arendt said that these men valued death and war rather than pity and helplessness.
Yeah.
And wanted to, there was this idea of elevating violence and power against what they saw as society's liberal hypocrisy, hip, hop, hip it to the
Hippity
hip,
hop,
hoppity
don't
don't
stop.
stop, rock it to the bang bang boogie, up jump the boogie to the beat.
Yeah. Hypocrisy.
Sure if it's hypocrisy or hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy.
We'll go with hypocrisy.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah.
The war produced millions of men who were psychologically primed for a movement that promised national resurrection through force. And Italy, of course, was the cradle of fascism now, which is as it should be, because as students of the Roman Empire, we love the idea of men walking the streets holding up fasces to say,
Yes.
stand back.
Yeah.
We have the power.
Right.
Even though Italy, unlike Germany, emerged from World War I on the winning side, Italians still felt humiliated by peace.
Yeah.
The Italians didn't get, excuse me, Italians didn't get all of the territory that they expected, that they were promised.
Right.
And there was economic crisis and social unrest. At the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Italy was technically part of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary, but when the shooting started...
Rome, yeah, let's switch.
Rome wiggled out of it by claiming the alliance was defensive.
Right.
And since Austria-Hungary had gone on the offensive against Serbia, Italy wasn't obliged to recognize the alliance. And for nearly a year, Italy stayed neutral, which really meant shopping around for the best deal.
Exactly. And in that deal, they were promised some land.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, expand on that, Ray.
Well, that's when you're Britain and France and you want all the help you can get. Let's be honest. We've all done this on a date with a hot girl. We're not sure how it's going to end. You will promise anything to seal the deal. And Britain and France did. They promised Italy. Is it northern Italy, the Tyrol? I'm trying to remember exactly what they were promised, but yeah, they were promised some territory. So not only do they lose people, not only is their economy wrecked, there's now social upheaval, like you were saying, but they don't even get the benefits of going through all that shit. So there's a lot of upset people, and as like you said, we know in our Roman series or Caesar series, the Romans don't mind solving their problems fisticuffs, So there's a lot of tension in the street.
Yeah, basically at the outbreak of the war, Austria gave them some vague promises of land that they would get after the war, but the Allies, Britain, France, and Russia,
Yeah,
offered them parts of Austria-Hungary, the
why
South
not?
Tyrol, Trentino, Istrian Peninsula, and even bits of the Ottoman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
That was enough to flip Italy. So
Yeah.
in May 1915, Italy declared war on Austria-Hungary, joined the Allies, later declared war on Germany in 1916.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't really, change wasn't really from one side to the other. They actually never fought for the Central Powers. They just abandoned their old allies and
Right.
accepted some new ones once the bribes were attractive enough. And that sort of fit the classic Italian realpolitik at the time, like treaties are conditional, borders are negotiable.
Yeah.
What makes it even spicier is that after the war, many Italians felt cheated because they didn't get all of the territory that they had been promised in the secret Treaty of London. They felt that they had been ripped off. It was known as a mutilated victory because they were promised a bunch of stuff, they didn't get it, and that became fuel for Mussolini's rise a few years later.
Yeah.
1919, the country is swept by labour strikes and peasant land sieges in what was called the Biennio Rosso, the Red Biennium.
Mm-hmm.
The Biennio Rosso was like this spasm of revolutionary energy right after World War I from about 1919 to 1920. So what you need to remember is not only has the world, particularly Europe, just been through World War I, but the Russian Revolution has just happened as well. So
Right.
we have this devastating world war, the worst war in human history to that point. And you also see the people in Russia rising up, overthrowing their monarchs, killing their monarchs, saying, the people are taking power. And that's inspiring to people right throughout the world, in this case, particularly in Europe, but it was also true in Australia. It was true in the United States. There was a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
People wanted to get a piece of the action. Um,
Right.
who
Well,
wouldn't want to kill a king?
well, not only that, but oh, we don't have to live like this. I'm actually allowed to rebel because what I was taught and my father was taught and my grandfather was taught was that God wanted that line of people, that family to appoint kings and to rule over us. And I thought I'd be going against God. You mean it's okay to not be happy and resist? Fucking sign me up. And a lot of people, living shit lives looking for something better. Just this chance of something better.
So you imagine a whole society coming back from the trenches of World War I. They're traumatized, they're
Yes.
angry, they're starving when they get home. It's financial crises. Then they're thrown into this atmosphere where they're looking at another country, Russia,
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
overthrowing their monarchs, their elite, the bourgeoisie, and they're like, "Oh,
Oh,
okay,
oh,
so that can be done."
right.
In the same way that 100 years earlier, the French Revolution happened, and the countries around Europe, well, it's a bit more than 100 years at that point. It was 150 years earlier,
Right.
give or take. Had and the American Revolution slightly before that too had seen people challenge the idea that monarchs were forever.
Right.
Now it's challenging the idea that particularly the capitalist elite are forever, and
Yeah.
people want a taste of socialism. They want more economic liberality. They want more economic freedom. Why are we starving and you're driving a Rolls Royce, right?
Right. At the end of the episode 2, you read off of the the demands that the fascists in Italy were making about, land distribution, more of the profits go to the people. You list off like 7 or 8 things. And so again, these people are not only pissed, but they have a very specific idea, at least of the end goal of what they would want to see, which is a hell of a lot more equality than they're getting now. All right, Hitler. Basically.
Uh, so, sorry, we're actually in Italy. So factories went on strike, peasants occupied land, trade unions organized mass protests.
Yeah.
Workers were pushing not just for better wages, but for actual workers' control of industry. And at its height in Italy, hundreds of thousands of factory workers, particularly in places like Turin and Milan, literally took over plants and ran them under workers' councils, inspired by what they were seeing happening with the Soviets in Russia.
Right.
Meanwhile, in the countryside, sharecroppers and peasants were staging massive land sieges in central and southern Italy. The Italian state looked paralyzed, and for a hot minute it seemed like a socialist revolution might be on the cards. The Socialist Party in Italy was actually pretty strong, but was divided between moderates who wanted parliamentary reform and radicals who dreamed of Bolshevism.
Right.
A complete replay of what happened between the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks in Russia a few years earlier.
Right.
And that disunity in the socialist parties, combined with the hesitation of the trade unions, meant that the moment for a socialist revolution in Italy fizzled. And by late 1920, the factory occupations collapsed without any sort of real structural change. The Red Biennium didn't really want to bring socialism to Italy, but it terrified the conservative establishment and the middle classes.
Yeah.
And that fear created sort of a fertile ground for Mussolini's fascists, who pitched themselves as the iron fist that would restore order.
Right.
Remember, in our earlier episodes, I talked about Trotsky's view that fascism is the tool that the conservative elite deploy when they are concerned that the people are getting restless, that the traditional mechanisms of control of the people to keep them in their place, combination of propaganda, the education system, the media, law and order, incentives to keep them at work, the farce of the political system, making them feel like they have a say in how things go. When those things start not to work as well, and it looks like the people are going to rise up and demand more money, more power, more control, a different kind of politician, that fascism is the tool that the conservative elite deploy to shut down that kind of progressive movement.
Right.
That's what we see happen in Italy.
If I could, because you make an interesting point. It's not like they wanted Italy to be communist. They're like, we want things to be a little better. We want things to be a little fairer. We want a slightly bigger piece of the pie because we do the majority of the work. And so, but there was really no way for them to put that in the words. And so for the establishment, it seems radical. It seems like they're going for everything. And I'm not trying to get political here, but it's like, if you're in America right now and you're big on the Second Amendment, there is no little tiny tweak of the law that you're willing to tolerate, probably because you see it as baby steps, a slippery slope. They're going to eventually come for your guns. Well, that's kind of the same thing here. We can't, don't demand, because they're demanding a little bit, but it seems like a lot to those who own it. And the second point that I wanted to make, first of all, the government of Italy, a parliamentary democracy, cannot handle this. They have no idea what to do. I don't know if they didn't have the right people in place, but they're overwhelmed. And the last thing is, you're right, though, the people who are landowners, the people that own the means of production, they're good. Like, I'm not so much a fascist, but if we can use the fascists to bash them over the head, to put them back in their place, that you're right, that the word tool is perfect. We will hire them. We will, whatever we got to do, incorporate them, but we will use them to put these extremists, these left radicals down. What comes after that? I don't know, but they certainly don't mind using a bludgeon to get rid of a threat to their pocket.
Well, you say they can't put it into words, but they did. We read the Fascist Manifesto
Right. No, I mean,
in our last
it seemed
episode.
right. But what I'm saying is they're not looking for everything and the moon. They just want a better dealing. But if you're the one that owns a factory, you're like, I like the way things are now. So anything you say to
Yeah.
me about changing the equation, that's radical. That's extreme. I should be able to use violence against you.
Well, speaking of violence, that's when the squadristi became a thing in Italy, the black shirt street fighters
Mm-hmm.
who rose up directly as a reaction to the upheaval of those 2 years, 1990, 1920.
Right.
The Red Biennium was Italy's near revolution, the closest the country ever got to a 1917-style communist upheaval, and its failure sort of cleared the way for the fascists to look like the solution for the people. So
Heroes.
Italy's bourgeois, the propertied classes, and the conservative politicians were looking for a force that could restore order, prevent a socialist revolution from happening. And into this breach stepped Benito Mussolini, who was a former socialist agitator who then turned ultra-nationalist.
Yeah.
During the war, Mussolini broke with the pacifist wing of the Socialist Party and embraced an extreme pro-war, pro-nation stance. Before he was a dictator, he was one of the brightest stars of the Italian socialist movement. And his story is almost Shakespearean, this meteoric rise inside of the party and inside of Italy, and then turning coat with dramatic consequences, and then obviously his demise. It's interesting, in preparation for this show, I went back and was reading newspapers from 1913 through the 20s and the 30s, looking for the earliest mentions of Mussolini. And there was a lot turning up in socialist newspapers. I think I posted one on Facebook, the Shawnee Socialist from Shawnee, Kansas, I think, near Topeka, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when there were socialist newspapers 100 years ago.
Wow.
Socialist groups had their own newspapers. And they were talking about his arrest and how he had been arrested because of this socialist newspaper that he was writing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave a fiery speech and he was let go. He was a fiery socialist journalist. That's where he started. By 1912, he'd climbed into leadership of the Italian Socialist Party, the PSI, and was editor of their newspaper Avanti, which means forward. And he was a hell of a writer. Combative, witty, radical. He attacked the monarchy. He attacked the church. He attacked the colonial wars that Italy was involved in, which he denounced as capitalist adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Made him sort of the darling of the party's revolutionary wing. Think of the current American president who campaigned on he's going to end all the wars. We've got to get out of the wars. How's that going?
Bad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a process. I'm not gonna lie to you. Oh, and just real quick, because I did a bio on Mussolini years ago. When he was a little boy, he would stand in front of his mirror and practice his speech and his gestures. And one time he was just yelling and screaming, and his mother came in and she's like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is wrong with you?" I don't know how to say that in Italian. And he just said, "Oh, I'm practicing for the day when the world will tremble at my words." Yeah. What? Sorry?
That's how you say it. Che pazzo, che pazzo.
You dumb fuck. So, but no, he was a very powerful speaker. Very powerful. And again, where have we seen that before?
Yeah. So the break came in 1914 when World War I erupted. The PSI, the Socialist Party, stuck to the internationalist orthodoxy. You know, workers have no country, meaning there should be no support for the war. Right. Mussolini at first towed the line. He even coined the slogan, "Not a man, not a cent for the war." But within months, he flipped. He argued that Italy should intervene, not on Germany's side, but with the Allies, because the war could sweep away the old monarchies and the clerical power of the church and would pave the way for a socialist revolution. So he kind of, and this is pre-Russian Revolution, but he's echoing sort of the views of the Bolsheviks, Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, etc.
Right.
That really we don't have time for some sort of hold hands, love and peace revolution. We need to strike when we can. There needs to be a violent
Yeah.
socialist revolution. We need to
Exactly.
take the power when the opportunity presents itself. But this was heresy to the Socialist Party. Like a lot of people, particularly in the West, I think, since the Cold War, have been educated to believe that socialism is inherently violent. It inherently wants
Good point.
violent overthrow of the established order. But 100 years ago, that wasn't the view of most socialists,
Yeah.
and today isn't the view of most socialists.
Well, they know
Most
where their
socialists,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah. They know where their power is. I mean, if they quit working, it affects those who have, and affects the war effort. So their inactivity can be their weapon. They don't have to go around and smash windows and stab people. So it's in their numbers and their ability to produce or not to produce. Sorry, go ahead.
well, but they also are happy to attempt a political movement
Mhm.
to change
To
the
get the
balance of power and to create
right.
more economic equality. They're happy to do it at the ballot box if that opportunity presents itself. Now, in our Cold War
Right.
show, we've been talking about Castro and his revolution in Cuba, where he
Yeah.
tried to do it at the ballot box,
You
and then
re-
Batista had a coup,
you-
and so there was no election. Then
right.
he tried to do it through the courts, and Batista used his control of the courts to shut that down.
He
So eventually,
exactly.
a
One option
violent
left.
overthrow of the government became
Right.
the last
Yeah.
option, right?
Well, Mussolini's thinking to a degree is I don't want it to take generations to get the kind of country or government that we can have. Short, sharp attack, like a band-aid right off. I mean, you make it intense and you make it bloody, but you also make it quick. At least that's the premise that he's going.
There's also, when you study these things over the last 100 years, what you come to understand is that the slow, peaceful path to equality rarely gets you anywhere
Yeah,
because the people with the money and the power are going to use every tool that they have to give away as little as possible of the money and the power that they have, which it makes sense, right? If you're
exactly.
rich and powerful, you don't want to give any of that up. So you will use your money and your power and your influence
Yeah,
to control the propaganda, to control the education system, to control the legal system, the taxation system, employment, people's ability to feed themselves. You will use every tool that you have to prevent that kind of change or to drag it out as long as possible
absolutely.
because you don't want to give up any of your money or power. That
Right.
is totally reasonable, totally rational. That's what you'd
Absolutely.
expect.
Human nature.
So if you try people who are trying to do it through peaceful, diplomatic, electoral mechanisms are going to find themselves frustrated when the
Yeah.
elite prevent any true meaningful change. They'll allow stuff, they'll toy around the edges. They'll say, okay, we're going to raise the minimum wage by 25 cents an hour. There you go. Aren't you fucking lucky?
Yeah.
Don't
Oh,
look at
we
my yacht and
victory. Exactly. Well,
don't look at my $1 billion.